Hello and welcome to another video of concept series. Today we are going to start a new class 7th history, chapter number 1, tracing changes through 1,000 years. We have completed a class 6. Now we are going to study of the class 7th history, tracing changes through 1,000 years, chapter number 1. So at the very first, we have given a map, a section of the world map drawn by the geographer Al-Idrisi in the 12th century, showing the Indian subcontinent from land to sea. So this is a geographer Al-Idrisi who has shown the map of India and its neighboring countries to this map, but it is upside down. He showed that Sri Lanka is at the top and India at the bottom, and this is the Thiruvananthapuram Kerala side, and this is the north. But according to me, this is the south, this is the north, and at front is Sri Lanka. But in today's world, it is opposite. Now, take a look at maps 1 and 2. Map 1 was made in 1154 CE by Arab geographer Al-Idrisi. The section reproduced here the details of the Indian subcontinent from his larger map of the world. Map 2nd was made in the 20th century by a French cartographer. So, who is a cartographer? Understand this: a person who makes maps. Who makes maps are called cartographer. So, map 2 is this. This one is more similar to today's world. This was made by Guillaume de Isles. It has shown that Sri Lanka is at the south and is north. This is much similar to today's world. Now, so map 2 was made by a French cartographer. The two maps are quite different even though they are of the same area. In Al-Idrisi's map, so they are explaining both the maps. South India is where we would expect to find North India, and Sri Lanka is the island at the top. So they are saying that South India is where we would expect to find North India. So we would expect to find North India here, but it is given here South India, and Sri Lanka is at the top. Place names are marked in. So these are names marked in Arabic. Now, and there are some well-known names like Kannauj in Uttar Pradesh, spelled in the map as Kannauj. Map 2nd was made this map is made nearly 600 years after map 1, during which time information about the subcontinent had changed considerably. This map seems more familiar to us, and coastal areas in particular are surprisingly detailed. This map was used by European sailors and merchants on their voyages. So this was made by a French cartographer. Now, equally important is the fact that the science of cartography differed in the two periods. When historians write documents, maps, and text from the past, they have to be sensitive to different historical backgrounds, the context in which information about the past was produced. So the first map, when the first map was created, at that time not much information was there about the Indian subcontinent, but map 2nd was made after 600 years of the map 1, so it is quite detailed. New and old terminologies. If the context in which information is produced changes with time, what about language and meanings? Historical records exist in a variety of languages which have changed considerably over the period. Medieval Persian, for example, is different from the modern Persian. So they are giving the example of old and new languages. The difference is not just with regard to grammar and vocabulary, the meaning of words also changed over time. So there, take example of Persian only. The medieval Persian is quite different from the modern Persian. Take the term Hindustan for example. Today we understand it as India, the modern nation state. When the term was used in the 13th century by Minhaj-e-Siraj, a chronicle who wrote in Persian, he meant the areas of Punjab, Haryana, and the land between the Ganga and Yamuna. He used the term in a political sense. So this person, Minhaj-e-Siraj, used this term Hindustan. Political sense for lands that were part of the dominions of the Delhi Sultans. We will read this about in the chapter number 3rd. The areas included in this term shifted with the extent of the Sultanate, but the term never included South India. So this term Hindustan never included South India at that time. By contrast, in the early 16th century, Babur and Hindustan used Hindustan to describe the geography, the fauna, and the culture of the inhabitants of the subcontinent. So fauna means the water bodies and all. As we will see later in this chapter, this was somewhat similar to the way the 14th century poet Amir Khusro used the word Hind, while the idea of the geographical and cultural entity like India did exist. The term Hindustan did not carry the political and national meanings which we associate with it today. Historians today have to be careful about in the terms they use because they meant different things in the past. Take for example a simple term like foreigner. It is used today to mean someone who is not an Indian. In the medieval period, a foreigner was any stranger who appeared, say, in a given village, someone who was not a part of the society or culture. In Hindi, the term Pardesi might be used to describe such a person, and in Persian, Ajnabi, a city dweller, therefore might have regarded a forest dweller as a foreigner, but two peasants living in the same place were not foreigners to each other, even though they may have different religious or caste backgrounds. So they are saying in the medieval of previous time, foreigner was used for the person who is not included in the society, who is not a part of that village or town, and come from outside. Historians and their sources. Historians use different types of sources to learn about the past depending upon the period of their study and the nature of their investigation. Last year, for example, we read about the rulers of the Gupta dynasty and the Harshvardhan. In this book, we will read about the following 1,000 years from roughly 700 to 1750. We will notice some continuity in the sources used by historians for the study of this period. So basically, this chapter is an overview of all the book. Whatever we will study in all the book, this is chapter is an overview of that. Historians still rely on coins, inscriptions, and architecture and textual records for information, but there is also considerable discontinuity. The number and the variety of textual records increased dramatically during this period. They slowly displaced other types of available information. Through this period, paper gradually became cheaper and more widely available. People used it to write holy texts, chronicles of the rulers, letters, and teaching of the saints, petitions and judicial records, and for registers of the accounts and taxes. Manuscripts were collected by the wealthy people, rulers, monasteries, and temples. They were placed in the libraries and the archives. What is the archive? A place where documents and manuscripts are stored. What is the archive? A place where documents and manuscripts are stored. Today, all the national and state governments have archives where they keep all their old official records and transactions. Now, these manuscripts and documents provide a lot of detailed information to historians, but they are also difficult to use. There was no printing press in those days, so scribes copied manuscripts by hand. If you have ever copied a friend's homework, you will know that this is not a simple exercise. Sometimes you cannot read your friend's handwriting and are forced to guess what is written. As a result, there are small but significant differences in a copy of a friend's work. Manuscript copying is somewhat similar. So they are explaining how the change by manually writing the manuscripts differentiate from the original manuscript. So let's suppose that one manuscript is written. One manuscript is written. So when some other wants to copy, or let's suppose it is decaying. So when other wants to copy it, one cannot decipher some words of that manuscript. So he'll forced to guess some words. So a little bit difference will be there. Then the third one will try to change after some time. So he'll have some differences in his manuscript. So over time, these changes become frequent from the original one to the latest one. So first we'll think there is a little difference, but at the end there is a significant difference in the original manuscript and the latest manuscript. So they are just trying to explain this in this paragraph. So what is written here? Let's read. As scribes, manuscript copying is somewhat similar. As scribes copied manuscripts, they also introduced small changes, a word here, a sentence there. So I was just telling about these. These small differences grew over centuries of copying until manuscripts of the same text become substantially different from the one another. Means from the original one to the latest one become significantly different. Now one photo was given, a painting of a scribe making a copy of manuscript. This person is this is a manuscript and he's making a copy of this. This painting is only this much of size. Because of its size, it is called a miniature. Miniature paintings were sometimes used to illustrate the text of manuscripts. So this painting is called miniature. Now one more figure is given. Different kinds of handwriting could make the reading of Persian and Arabic difficult. The Nastaliq style on the left, this style is cursive and easy to read. The Shikhaste on the right is denser and more difficult. So this one is easy to read and this one is hard to read. Because see, the overlapping of the letters of the Persian makes it difficult to read, but here the letters are written at a considerable distance. That's why this one is easy and this one is difficult to read. This is a serious problem because we rarely find the original manuscript of the author today. We are totally dependent upon the copies made by later scribes. Scribes mean people who copy something. As a result, historians have to read different manuscript versions of the same text to guess what the author had originally written. On occasion, author revised their chronicles at different times. The 14th century chronicle, Ziauddin Barani wrote his chronicle first in 1356 and another versions 2 years later, that is in 1358. The two differ from each other, but historians did not know about the existence of the first version until the 1960s. It remained lost in the large library collections. New social and political groups. The study of 1,000 years between 700 and 1750 is a huge challenge to historians, largely because of the scale and variety of developments that occurred during this period. At different moments in this period, new technologies made their appearance, like the Persian wheel in irrigation, the spinning wheel in weaving, and the firearms in the combat, which was first introduced by the Babur in India. We will read about this in the chapter number 4, the Mughal Empire. New foods and beverages, means drinks, arrived in the subcontinent. Potatoes, corn, chilies, tea, and coffee. Remember that all these innovations, all these new innovations, new technologies, and new crops came along with people who brought other ideas with them as well. As a result, this was a period of economic, political, social, and cultural changes. We will read about some of these changes in the chapter number 5, 6, and 7. This was also a period of great mobility. Groups of people traveled long distances in search of opportunity. The subcontinent held immense wealth and the possibilities for people to carve a fortune. One group of the people who became important in its periods were the Rajputs, a name derived from Rajputra, the son of the ruler. So this is a derivation of the word Rajput. Between the 8th and the 14th centuries, the term was applied more generally to a group of warriors who claimed Kshatriya caste status. So this is a Persian wheel for watering the crops. So please, okay. Now, what was written here? The term included not just rulers and chieftains, but also the soldiers and the commanders who served in the armies of the different monarchs all over the subcontinent. Chivalric code of the conductor means moral code of conduct. Extreme valor and great sense of loyalty were the qualities attributed to the Rajputs by their poets and bards. Bards mean they are who people believe that these were a ruler, who accepted them as a ruler. Those are bards. Other groups of people such as the Marathas, Sikhs, Jats, and Ahoms and Kayasthas, a caste of scribes and secretaries, also used the opportunities of the age to become politically important. Throughout this period, there was a gradual clearing of forests and the extension of agriculture, a change faster and more complete in some areas than in others. Changes in their habit forced many forest dwellers to migrate. Others started tilling the land and became peasants. These new peasant groups gradually began to be influenced by the regional markets. So they are telling the development of the people and the rulers. They become part of large complex societies and were required to pay taxes and offer goods and services to local lords. As a result, significant economic and social differences emerged among peasants. Some possessed more productive land, others also kept cattle, and some combined artisanal work with the agricultural activity during the lean season. Lean meaning in non-harvesting season. So, as society became more differentiated, people were grouped into jatis or subcastes and ranked on the basis of their backgrounds and their occupations. Ranks were not fixed permanently and varied according to the power, influence, and the resources controlled by members of the jati. The status of the same jati could vary from area to area. Jatis framed their own rules and regulations to manage the conduct of the members. Okay, these regulations were imposed by an assembly of elders, described in some areas as a jati panchayat. But jatis are also required to follow the rules of their villages. Several villages were governed by a chieftain. Together, they were only one small unit of a state. Reason and empire. Large states like those of the Cholas, Tughlaqs, and the Mughals encompassed many regions, means occupied many regions. A Sanskrit Prashasti, see chapter 2 for an example of a Prashasti, praising the Delhi Sultan Ghiyasuddin Balban, explained that he was a ruler of the vast empire that stretched from Bengal in the east to Ghazni and Afghanistan in the west and included all of the South India. Dravida, people of different regions, Andhra, Kerala, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Gujarat, apparently fled before his armies. So, historians regard these as an exaggerated claim of conquest. At the same time, they try to understand why rulers kept claiming to have control over the different parts of the subcontinent. So, they were trying to know why the rulers wanted to praise themselves. Okay, so here I have given provinces of Delhi Sultanate during the Muhammad Tughlaq's reign according to the Egyptian source Masalik al-Absar fi Mamalik al-Amsar of Shahabuddin Umri. So this is a source. So here names are given like 18th for the Malwa region. Okay, and 21st for Gujarat, and this is for Mabar, Kannauj, 18th. This one, where is it? This one is the Kannauj, for Kannauj. This 12th here. Okay, so this is the map, you can decipher it yourself. Now, by 1700, many regions already possess distinct geographical dimensions and their own language and cultural characteristics. We will learn more of these in chapter number 9. These are also associated with the specific ruling dynasties. These were considerably conflict between the states. Occasional dynasties like the Cholas, Khiljis, Tughlaqs, and the Mughals were able to build an empire that was a pan-regional, spanning diverse regions. Not all these empires were equally stable or successful. Means some of them was not successful. Compare, for example, table 1 in the chapter number 3 and 4. What was the duration of the rule of the Khilji and the Mughal dynasties? When the Mughal declined in the 18th century, it led to the emergence of the regional states. But years of imperial pan-regional rule had altered the character of the regions. Across most of the subcontinent, the regions were left with the legacies of the big and the small states that had ruled over them. This was apparent in the emergence of many distinct and shared traditions in the realms of governance, the management of the economy, elite cultures, and language through the thousand years between 700 and 750. The character of the different regions did not grow in isolation. These regions felt the impact of larger pan-regional forces of integration without ever quite losing their distinctiveness. Means in this topic they are telling how the kingdoms grew and declined and what was the development of the people, how regional kingdoms take control after the decline of the Mughals, how some ruler was not stable or not successful, some were very successful. Old and new religions. A thousand years of history that we are exploring witnessed major developments in the religious traditions. So people's belief in the divine was sometimes deeply personal, but more usually it was collective. Collective belief is a supernatural agency. Religion was often closely connected with the social and the economic organization of local communities. As the social world of these groups altered, so did their beliefs. It was during this period that important changes occurred in what we call Hinduism today. These included the worship of new deities, the construction of temples by royalty, and the growing of importance of the Brahmins, the priests, as dominant groups in society. The knowledge of Sanskrit texts earned the Brahmins a lot of respect in society. The dominant position was consolidated by the supporters of their patrons, meaning a patron an influential, wealthy individual who supports another person, an artist, a craftsperson, a learned man, or a noble. New rulers searching for the prestige. So patron mean a wealthy people, okay, who supports a person, a who support another person like craftsperson, an artist, or and etc. and so on and so forth. One of the major developments of this period was the emergence of the idea of bhakti, of a loving personal deity that devotees could reach without the aid of priest and elaborate rituals. We'll be learning about this other tradition in the chapter number 8. Now, this was also the period when new religion appeared in the Indian subcontinent. Merchants and migrants first brought the teaching of the Holy Quran into India in the 17th centuries. Muslims regard the Quran as their holy book and accept the sovereignty of the one God, Allah, whose love, mercy, and the bounty embrace all those who believe in Him without regard to the social backgrounds. Many rulers were patrons of Islam and the learned theologies and Judaism. Unlike Hinduism, Islam was interpreted in a variety of ways. It is followers. There were Shia Muslims who believed that the Prophet Muhammad's son-in-law Ali was the legitimate leader of the Muslim community, and the Sunni Muslim who accepted the authority of the early leaders, Khalifas of the community, and the succeeding Khalifas. There were other important differences between the various school of law, Hanafi and Shafi in mainly in India, and in theology and mystic traditions. Thinking about the time and historical periods. Historians do not see time just as a passing of hours, days, or years. As a clock or calendar, time also reflects changes in social and economic organization. In the persistence of the transformation of ideas and beliefs, the study of time is made somehow easier by dividing the past into large segments, periods that possesses shared characteristics. In the middle of the 19th century, British historians divided the history into three periods. This is very, very important. Please underline this: Hindu, Muslim, and British period. This division was based on the idea that the religion of rulers was the only important historical change that were there, and no significant development in the economy. Means at the first in ancient history there was only Hindu rulers like Gupta period, Harshvardhan, Gautiputra, Shishatkarni. They all belong to Hindu community. And then the next phase, the Delhi Sultanate, all the Muslims and Afghans, and the Mughal Empire, also Muslims. And the third is the modern history, that is for the British. Such a division also ignored the rich diversity of the subcontinent. Few historians follow this periodization today. Most look to the economic and the social factors to characterize the major elements of different moments of the past. The histories you read last year included a whole wide range of early societies: hunter gatherers, early farmers, people living in towns and villages, and early empires and kingdoms. The histories you will be studying this year are often described as medieval. You'll find more about the spread of peasant societies, the rise of regional and imperial state formation, sometimes at the cost of pastoral and forest people, the development of Hinduism and Islam as major religion, and the arrival of European trading companies during the period of the Jahangir. These 1,000 years of Indian history witnessed a considerable change. After all, the 16th and the 18th century were quite different from the 8th or the 11th century. Means the 18th century, means the arrival of at the time of the British, were quite different from the arrival of the Delhi Sultanates. Therefore, describing the entire period as one historical unit is not without its problems. Moreover, the medieval period is often contrasted with the modern period. Modernity carries with it a sense of material progress and intellectual advancement. This seems to suggest that the medieval period was lacking in any change whatsoever, but of course, we know this was not the case. So they're just telling in this paragraph the difference why we read medieval and the modern history separately, because if we read it together that will be just a mess, because modern history contains many modern ideas, political advancement, and the medieval history contains the different kingdoms. So during these 1,000 years, the societies of the subcontinent were transformed into often and economies in several regions reached a level of prosperity that attracted the interest of the European trading companies. As you read this book, look out of the science changes and the historical process at work. Also, whenever we can compare what we read in this book, we will compare this and what we read last year. Look out for the changes in the continuity where you can, and look at the world around you to see what else has changed or remained the same. So this was the end of the chapter. So please answer. Keywords are there: manuscripts, jati, reason, and periodization. So now you have to answer the question answers in the comment section. Who were considered the foreign in the past? Now I am telling you the true or false. We do not find inscription for the period after 1700. This is false, because after 1700 there were many textual contents and many buildings, historical buildings. So this is false. The Marathas asserted their political importance during